If you're in a relationship, this video will actually really help you when it comes to conflict with your partner. And I had this saying come to me the other day, and it's a little bit of a spin-off of a saying that's already out there. And that saying is, you can't reason with madness, which means that if someone is in a really bad mood and they're in a panic and they're having crazy anxiety and they're just seeing every situation as a threat, you can't easily reason with somebody who's already in that really heightened emotional state. And here's the added bit of the saying that I added to it. You can't reason with madness, but you can't argue with clarity, because clarity won't argue with you. I love this, because it actually speaks to the other person often involved in the situation, whereas the first one is just speaking about the person who's wildly upset, and generally there's a reason for being upset. They're not completely crazy, there's something going on in their experience and they're reacting to it and they're having an emotional reaction. It's very real for them. But the person who is really calm and who is observing the situation and who's kind of involved with this person, let's call them the person who has the clarity. Now the trick is, when you are in the middle of that situation where you've got two people feeling two different things, is to make sure that the one that is clear doesn't join the other person in their distress. And that is really essential in keeping just keeping your own peace. Because let's just say, for example, we are the clear ones, and we're talking about, or we're thinking about somebody in our life who has had a moment of and they're just completely emotionally all over the place. The person who isn't emotional in that moment, the number one thing for them to do is to keep their cool, to keep their clarity, and to keep their calm perspective of the situation, and to not join the other person in their distress, in their worry, in their anxiety, because that's not going to help anyone. When you are feeling those intense negative emotions, that is a sign that your inner being is not seeing the situation the same way that you are. And so therefore, the person who is freaking out isn't seeing things in a clear and constructive way, and they're not actually going to be able to help themselves out of that situation. It's kind of like somebody in a ditch and somebody else is out on the top of the who's out of the ditch and who can actually help pull you out. You don't want the person who can pull you out to go down there with you. But I remember when I used to be really, really emotional many years ago. I had lots of hormonal issues going on. It was awful. But when I would get into those heightened states, if my partner didn't join me in my, didn't see it the way that I saw it, I felt abandoned, and I felt like I was crazy, and I felt unseen, unheard, misunderstood. But the thing is, you don't want somebody to get into agreement with you when you are freaking out, because that just makes it more true and more real. When I know that there's a reason why, when you're in those intense emotional states, that everything seems like it's absolutely detrimental and something really bad is going to happen, but you want somebody who's in a really clear state of mind to be able to keep their state of mind and keep their peace and not join you in your freak out. If you are in a relationship and you've got a partner who freaks out often, my advice to you is to stay in your clarity by not arguing with them, by not trying to reason with them when they're in that heightened emotional state, to remember who they are when they're not like that. Because when they're like that, sometimes they can project onto you, they can get angry at you, especially if you're not willing to join them in whatever dysfunctional mood they're in at that point. Because if they're freaking out and they're why don't you see it the way that I see it, don't take offense. Don't join them in their anger. Don't mirror their emotions. Stay completely centered in your emotions, and during the interaction, make sure that you keep your focus on who this person is when they're not freaking out. Because if you are only focusing on what they're being like right now, you're not seeing them as their true self. You're actually seeing them in their dysfunction, and you're making it bigger, because law of attraction says that whatever you give your attention to gets bigger. So if you are noticing that your partner is being dysfunctional, even if they're freaking out for no good reason, well, seemingly no good reason, there's always a good reason for the person. But if they're freaking out, and if you are noticing that and getting upset with that, you are going to make the situation so much worse. So the best thing that you can do is to leave them to freak out sort of on their own, but in a loving way, being like, you know what, I'm gonna let you soothe yourself, or you really, it just depends on the situation, and you are the best one to sort of make that judgment call. But try not to force them out of the mood, and don't make it worse by arguing with them. You can't argue with clarity, because clarity doesn't argue with you. When you start arguing with them, that's when you stepped away from your clarity, and that's when you're now actually you're down there with them in the ditch, because there's no point trying to argue with somebody when they're down there like that. Soft general statements like, it's all going to be okay, this too shall pass, we'll work it out together, let's just calm down for now, maybe let's just take an hour and not think about it for a while. Like, go as general as you can. Don't focus on the specifics when they're in that really heightened emotional state. Bring them down first, or remove yourselves from the situation. Clarity needs to stay clear. Once you start arguing with them, then you've lost your clarity. It's just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. Just be kind and gentle about it, and just remember who they are aside from all that, emotion, because they're just in the middle of something and they will come out of it. The person you love is underneath all that. If you focus too much on them in that moment, and in their weakness, and in their sort of down state, you will make it bigger, and then they will react because they'll see you seeing them as dysfunctional, and then that will cause more emotion, and then it will just get bigger and bigger and bigger, like law of attraction says. So the best thing that you can do is either remove yourself, calm them down, but don't join them in their fear, in their anxiety, in their worry. Stay calm and remember that this too shall pass, and try and encourage them in that sense. That mirroring effect really does make a big impact on the other person and on you, and you don't need to take on your partner's fears and worries and anxieties. You can help guide them from a place of clarity, love, and